Hey guys, if you're watching this lesson, you're here to learn about soil formation. This lesson's essential question is how is soil formed? And the objective of this lesson is to explain the processes involved in soil formation. So before you get started, go ahead and copy this image into your input. I understand that we're not all artists, just do your best to copy this in. So what you see in this drawing is the different soil layers. The organic layer would be the closest to what we see, so that's where grass and plants come out of. And then as we move deeper into the crust, you'll see bedrock. So the layers in between are topsoil, subsoil, and parent material. Once you're done copying this, feel free to unpause and then move on. So before you get started, let's ask ourselves, how does an igneous rock change into sedimentary rock over time? I understand there is a typo, it says sediments rock. I'm asking you sedimentary rock. It's okay if you don't know, go back into your notes so that you can answer the question. Okay, so what is weathering? Weathering is the process by which materials on or near the Earth's surface break down and change. So there are two types of weathering that we're going to talk about: mechanical weathering, which is also known as physical weathering, and chemical weathering. So the process of weathering breaks down rock and soil into smaller pieces, but, this should say but, not bud, but doesn't move it. So next class, we're going to talk about the two different types of weathering and how to differentiate for the two. But for today's lesson, we're just going to touch on these two types. So we know that weathering does not move rock and soil, but there are two processes that do. There's erosion and deposition. So erosion is the removal of weathered rock and soil from its original location through agents such as water, glaciers, wind, ocean currents, and waves. And then deposition, in contrast with erosion, occurs when materials that are moved as a result of erosion are dropped in a new location. So an easy way to differentiate between these two, sorry, I'm having so much trouble speaking, between these two is erosion is simply the removal, whereas deposition is when they are moved to a brand new location. Okay. So what is soil? Soil is the loose covering of weathered rock particles and decaying organic matter called humus, not hummus, but humus, that is found on top of Earth's surface or bedrock. It is the product of thousands of years of weathering and biological activity. So soil allows plants to grow. So what you'll see in this picture over here is literally what we saw in our input. So this is the real life version here. So at the top you see your organic layer, and towards the bottom you'll see your bedrock. Okay. So let's talk. What is permeability? So permeability describes how easily a liquid passes through a material, whereas porosity, the word porosity describes how much liquid can be stored in the material. So you guys probably remember these terms from our surface water and groundwater lessons. We're just going to touch on them again because they're important to know. Virus protection, whoa. So permeability describes how easily liquid passes through a material, while porosity describes how much liquid can be stored in a material. So now that we know these vocab words, we're going to differentiate between them after you go through your textbook and answer these questions. So there are 4 questions that you need to use pages 176 to 181 of your textbook to answer. So feel free to pause here, and once you're done, you're welcome to move forward. So there are 4 different types of soil, which we'll talk about: sand, pebbles, silt, and clay. If you've already completed the soil formation triangle independent practice, you guys probably have heard of these types. So sand, pebbles, silt, clay. You might have seen loam, sandy loam, clay loam, all these things. There are many different types of soil, but there are 4 main categories which we'll talk about. So back to permeability and porosity. We're going to just do some quick question analysis. Which type of soil would have the greatest porosity? So remember from this slide here, porosity describes how much liquid can be stored in the material. So we're going to go back. So what do you think the answer to this is? Pebbles or silt? This is silt. This is pebbles. So if you answered pebbles, you are correct. So what you'll notice is this is like a microscopic view or a close-up view of Pebbles would be on the left-hand side. Silt would be on your right-hand side. There are these things called pore spaces, which are filled with these little gray spots. You notice that between the pebbles, which are these white circle things, there is more pore space in comparison to the silt, which are these weird, little square, weird shapes, rocks, yeah, whatever, soil. And so there is less pore space in here. So therefore, pebbles are more porous, or they have greater porosity in comparison to silt. So let's move on. Which type of soil would have the least porosity? So last question asked you what was the greatest porosity. This is least. If you said clay, you are correct. So then we're going to move on. Which type of soil would have the greatest porosity, silt or clay? If you said silt, you are correct. So you need to copy this down into your notebook. It's very important that you are able to do this. You need to list the following types of soil from greatest to least porosity. So it has the greatest ability to hold liquid compared to it has the least or the smallest or the least amount of ability to store water or liquid. Sorry, my brain just kind of died there. Okay, so your 4 examples are silt, pebbles, clay, and sand. So think about this. If you said pebbles have the greatest porosity, you are correct. And then it goes sand, silt, and clay. Clay has the least porosity. Okay? So in your output, I need you to turn to page 178 and draw figure 18. So you need to label the undeveloped soil and the mature soil and include the caption at the bottom of your picture in your output. Once you've completed your output, you're done with today's lesson, and you can work on completing the independent practice, any makeup work you might have, and the exit ticket for today. Make sure it's very important that you complete the exit ticket just so that I can understand what gaps you might have, and so you can quiz yourself and make sure you're reviewing and really absorbing content. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day.